Today we're going to comparison test two 80s icons. The 83 to 84 GTI Mark I is the quintessential hot hatch. This particular car is a 91 318is, which was the last iteration of these cars. Still, the E30 is a car of the 80s, and we think it's a fair test. So what makes these cars so popular today? Well, it's all about the drivability and the practicality. In the case of the 318is, it has air conditioning, it has power windows, they both have fuel injection, they both have window seals that actually seal the windows. They're just comfortable, they're ergonomically designed so that you can drive all day in one of these cars. That's what's making them so popular. BMW basically perfected the sports sedan concept. They started the sports sedan concept back in the late 60s, but the E30 perfected it. In 91, when this car came out, BMW had kind of lost their way. They had gotten so expensive, this 318is was introduced as a GTI fighter. Now by 91, it was the Mark II GTI, not the Mark I, but still, this car was built to fight this car. This car, when new, was about $22,000, which was right in the GTI's price range. The earliest GTI came out at about $10,000, but of course, from 83 to 91, there was a lot of inflation and everything changed. Still, the E30 is a car of the 80s, and we think it's a fair test. Another thing that makes this test even fairer is this has a 1.8 liter four-cylinder. This has a 1.8 liter four-cylinder. Now, to be honest, we have bored this one out. Both of these cars have similar modifications, some suspension and engine modifications. This car has a little extra trick under its sleeve. It has a very rare and desirable Calloway turbo kit. While these are both cars from my collection, and I've put a lot of miles on this 318is, and I've run it at tracks like Daytona and VIR, I've just gotten this GTI finished, and I've only put about 200 miles on it. So I really have no idea how this is going to go. So to make things a little more fair, I've asked Tom Suttard, one of our editors, to help us. He races a water-cooled Volkswagen, and he's owned several E30s. We're going to take turns, we're going to drive them on all kinds of different roads, and at the end of the day, we hope to be able to tell you which one of these you want more.
First impressions driving the GTI. It was really weird at first. I thought some really tall person had been driving it, or maybe the wheel was set wrong or anything. It didn't seem like the interior fit me when I got in. It's not that kind of traditional sit on the floor, feet out in front of you, laid back sports car driving position. So that took a little bit of getting used to, and once I realized that, okay, you ride in it like a modern car, then it was fantastic. Really, really love the torque that the turbo gives it. I didn't really get a chance to wind it out and hit redline and feel what all the power is like, but just driving around on the street, it kind of fixes that small engine feel that an original GTI has, and it makes it feel way, way, way more modern and able to keep up with traffic without constantly downshifting to second. I will say though, tons and tons of lag. It does not drive like a modern turbo car. You can tell that computers have helped those a lot in a lot of different areas, and you could feel turbo lag at every single opportunity. Once you got over that though, it was fantastic.
It's pretty impressive. Even though it's only 5-6 pounds of boost, it takes that lightweight car and really, really rockets it down the road. Everything it does, it feels even lighter than the 318is, which feels very light compared to a modern car. So it's an interesting comparison. The front wheel drive GTI certainly handles well. It handles in a hot hatch GTI kind of way.
The GTI just felt screwed together really well. It was fairly stiff. It didn't shake and rattle. It was very, very comfortable and planted in corners. And oddly enough, for a front wheel drive car, understeer really wasn't an issue. If anything, that car was set up a little loose for street driving, aggressive mountain roads, that kind of thing. So. And the steering also on the GTI was very, very direct, great feel, great feedback. I think BMWs are known for their legendary steering, but I would pick the GTI over the E30 in a minute for sure.
The GTI is probably let down in conveniences. The interior is very upright but very comfortable. Those Recaro seats, which are actually very similar to the 318is seats, are super comfortable. You could drive all day in that car.
You could definitely tell that the GTI was built to be a car for the masses before it was built into a sports car by Volkswagen and then Calloway in the case of this example. I would call the GTI a very, very well executed dirt cheap car. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially with what they sold for new, and you know, the way this one has survived, that interior is all original.
The GTI is the iconic hot hatch. It is so tough looking with those snowflake wheels and the plastic, black plastic arches and the front spoiler. It is the coolest looking hot hatch probably ever made. I would have to give the nod to the GTI in the styling department.
I think it's super cool. You know, those were kind of the first classic Volkswagens I knew growing up. But nobody's going to say that it's a timeless, beautiful design. I think it maybe is a beautiful piece of industrial design. You know, just like a really, really nice toaster, you can appreciate the art that went into it. But I don't think anybody's going to step back and look at the GTI like they're looking at a Ferrari. And it feels a little unfair here to compare the first cheap Econobox that was sold in large numbers against a German sports sedan. But here we go. I think the E30 looks better. I love that classic three-box styling. I love looking out over the long hood, or at least a longer hood than the GTI. Everything was right where I expected it to be. I love how the center of the dash with the HVAC controls and the radios points right at the driver. So, you know, kind of everywhere I looked in the 318is, I expected the leather or the more premium feel of a higher end E30, and it was just like the GTI. Same fabric, same hard plastics, same, you know, there was no onboard computer or fancy features like that. Car to car, I'm gonna have to go with the 318is on the interior, just because I think the driving position is more comfortable and it feels much, much, much more like a traditional sports car.
So in stock form, both this 318is and the GTI had 1.8 liter engines. The GTI was rated at somewhere just south, I think, of 100 horsepower. 318is was in about the 134 horsepower range, but was carrying more weight. So they were probably identical when new in the performance category, but the turbo gives the GTI more lift, I would say, more power, certainly faster 0 to 100 than the 318is, even though the 318is is got a 2 liter instead of a 1.8 liter engine and some very careful engine modifications.
The driving dynamics are absolutely BMW all the way through. There's a 4-cylinder engine instead of a 6-cylinder, that's for sure, but it still drives like a BMW, still has that BMW steering, that BMW feel, and that BMW handling. This is just a fantastic car to drive down a twisty road. And as far as power delivery, lacks torque compared to the GTI, absolutely. Whereas in the Volkswagen, I was shifting at 3,500, 4,000 RPM, not really having to push it to keep up. You know, makes it a much more engaging drive, but definitely not as relaxing or as easy to keep up with modern traffic.
You know, if I had to pick a car to go from here to California in, I might pick the 318is, especially in the summer. The 318is, it feels a little more solid. It's a little less rattly. It's very vault-like, typical BMW build quality. It's quite comfortable as well. It's one of the best handling cars I've ever driven.
I'm amazed at how easily you can find parts for the E30 BMW and for the GTI too, to a lesser extent. Back when I was playing with E30s in high school, you were lucky if you could find one person on a forum selling some used parts that would fit your car. And these days there are so many suppliers online that cater to exactly this kind of car and this kind of enthusiast that it is so easy to buy parts. There's Bimmer World for performance parts, there's FCP Euro for OE replacement stuff, there's Metric Mechanic if you need an engine built, and there's Tectonics Tuning too on the water-cooled Volkswagen side that makes almost everything for those cars if you want to make them faster. So, you know, this is one area where the internet has made the world better, and it has never been easier to keep one of these cars on the road.
So as far as values go, I discussed earlier that they both come up significantly in values. So I don't know if I could pick a clear winner. I would say that the GTI might be slightly more iconic as far as the car that everybody knows and loves as the hot hatch, the original hot hatch. So I guess that one would probably ultimately have a stronger value.
So which car would I pick to put in my garage? This is tough. I think in this case though, I'm gonna have to pick the E30. It's just a better car. But if I was picking one car to put into a museum, I wouldn't pick the E30, I'd pick the GTI. I think while the E30 is a better driving car and a better car to own and live with, the GTI is a better object to exemplify the time and place it was built. And that's why if I was going to pick one car for a museum, I'd pick the GTI in a heartbeat. It is so cool and so quintessential early 80s hot hatch that it's the one I would take home for my museum.
So when we do these comparisons, it's usually pretty apparent about halfway through what's going to win. This was tougher than that, but I think all things considered, I think if we could only keep one of these cars in the garage, I think it would be this E30 BMW. If you like this sort of stuff, please subscribe to our channel and go to our website, classicmotorsports.com. We do updates on both of these project cars as well as all kinds of other cars every single week. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Support brands that support classic motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.